The Luftwaffe, the pride of the Third Reich and Europe's nightmare at the dawn of the Second World War, was born as an outlawed project after the Treaty of Versailles. Forged in the shadows, it became the airborne fist of Nazi expansion. Surprise, speed, and terror. Its Bf-10-9s and Ju-87 Stukas tore open breaches. Its He-11s and Do-17s hammered cities and columns. The emblem of its peak was the Blitz over London between 1940 and 1941, when entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. Its dominance seemed absolute until it collided with strategic mistakes, industrial limits, and determined defenses. This is the story of a dizzying rise and an inevitable fall. The end of the First World War left Germany under strict military restrictions. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, explicitly forbade the creation of an air force, limiting Germans to only a handful of aircraft for civilian use. But the seed of revenge was already taking root, and in the 1920s, the dream of flying did not die. It simply disguised itself. Civil aviation schools trained future combat pilots under the cover of preparing crews for commercial airlines like Deutsche Lufthansa. The real breakthrough, however, came through a secret agreement with the Soviet Union. In 1924, a clandestine training base was established in Lipetsk, officially presented as a unit of the Red Army. There, for nearly a decade, dozens of young Germans learned to fly modern aircraft and to experiment with combat tactics. They trained with Soviet and Dutch equipment, but also with German prototypes banned on their own soil. Pilots who would later become Luftwaffe aces, like Makratsky or Ressing, sharpened their skills at that remote Russian airfield. Little by little, Germany's air ambitions grew. And in 1933, with Hitler in power, secrecy turned into official policy. Rearmament stopped being a secret, and 2 years later, the creation of the Luftwaffe was publicly announced, under the command of Hermann Göring. What had begun as a covert project became one of the most modern air forces in the world, and it would soon find the perfect opportunity to prove itself.
1936 would see the fledgling Luftwaffe make its entry into the Spanish Civil War, which gave the Germans an excellent testing bed for their new aircraft and new ideas on the future conduct of warfare. By the end of the Spanish Civil War in 1939, the Luftwaffe would have a core element of experienced battle-trained pilots. The Luftwaffe was expanded rapidly in the years immediately before the outbreak of the Second World War.
The key to its power lay not only in its aircraft, but in its doctrine. Germany developed a concept of air warfare that did not treat the skies as a separate battlefield, but as a direct extension of infantry and tanks. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighter, produced in more than 30,000 units, became the symbol of this new era, fast, lethal, and versatile. Alongside it, medium bombers and dive bombers brought Blitzkrieg to life, a coordinated storm that shattered defenses in a matter of hours. The Luftwaffe was not created simply as a fighting force, but as a strategic weapon meant to transform war. Disciplined pilots, innovative tactics, and a constellation of aircraft that made the difference in the skies. Everything working in tight coordination, like a mechanism designed to wage lightning war with maximum efficiency. Now, to understand the fear Nazi air power inspired in its early years, we need to look at the strengths of its most advanced aircraft, because each one played a key role in battle. As we already mentioned, the Messerschmitt Bf 109 was the emblem of the Luftwaffe, the light fighter that started it all. With its Daimler-Benz engine and refined aerodynamics, it was fast, maneuverable, and adaptable. So much so that it was present from the invasion of Poland to the final fighting over Berlin. With nearly 34,000 units produced, it faced the toughest Allied contenders and established itself as one of the most iconic fighters in history.
In 1938, the 109 is armed with three 7.9mm machine guns. Its 670 horsepower engine gives it a top speed of 300 miles per hour. The 109 will be the aircraft in which the greatest of the German fighter races will win their reputations.
But its legacy was not the only one. The Luftwaffe also relied on aircraft like the Messerschmitt Bf 110, designed as a long-range heavy fighter, a twin-engine aircraft with formidable firepower. It proved effective in several campaigns, though it also suffered enormous losses against more agile opponents. Over time, it was converted into a fighter bomber and later found a second life intercepting British aircraft during night raids. And that was not all. If we talk about icons, we cannot forget the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, the symbol of Blitzkrieg's psychological terror. This dive bomber struck with surgical precision, and it also spread fear with its distinctive scream as it plunged toward its targets. Infantry and civilians panicked when they heard it. It was devastating in the war's opening campaigns, including the assault on Poland.
September the 1st, 1939. Blitzkrieg is unleashed on Poland. As the great masses of German armor begin to roll, the Luftwaffe strikes deep into the Polish heartland. The targets of the German bombers are airfields and industrial centers. Fighters cover the relentless advance of the armored columns.
Within the Luftwaffe's extensive list of aircraft also stood out the Heinkel He-111 medium bomber, the rugged and agile Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighter, the versatile Junkers Ju-88, and the gigantic Heinkel He-177. And we cannot forget the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. With a top speed of more than 800 kilometers per hour, it was practically untouchable for Allied fighters. Its 30mm cannons could tear bombers apart in seconds, but it arrived too late. It entered service in 1944, when Germany was already on the defensive and maintenance problems multiplied. Even so, this overview makes one thing clear. The Luftwaffe had built a varied fleet, well prepared to dominate the battlefield. And during the first years of the Second World War, that is exactly what it did.
But on May the 10th, 1940, the order is given. Over 300 German bombers take to the air. Their objective is the destruction of 22 airfields in France, Belgium, and Holland. In one day, the Belgian and Dutch air forces are virtually destroyed. The French air force is badly damaged. The following day, it is the turn of the British airfields in France.
The Nazi advance was crushing. But the summer of 1940 marked a turning point for the Luftwaffe. After the lightning victory over France, the Nazi air machine seemed unstoppable. The Wehrmacht had shown the world the power of Blitzkrieg, and Hitler's next objective was to force Great Britain to surrender, or ultimately, to prepare the ground for an invasion. Operation Sea Lion. To do that, the Luftwaffe had a crucial mission: destroy the Royal Air Force and seize control of the British skies. The Führer knew his plans could not move forward if the RAF stood in the way, and the order was clear: finish them.
Hitler had stated that the Royal Air Force must be defeated before an invasion of England could begin. And during the summer months of 1940, the Royal Air Force and the Luftwaffe battled for control of the skies over southern England.
At first, everything seemed to favor the Germans. In July and August 1940, Bf 109 fighters and Heinkel He-11-1 bombers launched a fierce offensive against airfields, radar stations, and aircraft factories. RAF losses were heavy, and the pressure increased day by day. In that scenario, the Luftwaffe showed its ability to operate like a relentless hammer, steadily wearing down Britain's defenses. But the Germans underestimated both British resilience and their own limitations. The RAF had an advanced defense system based on radar, ground observers, and an efficient communications network that allowed Spitfire and Hurricane fighters to be deployed at exactly the right moment. Each German attack met a coordinated response, and little by little the Luftwaffe's losses in pilots and aircraft began to mount. The decisive strategic error came in September, when Hitler, frustrated by the lack of quick results, ordered a shift in targets. Instead of continuing to strike air bases, the Luftwaffe was forced to focus on cities, launching what became known as the Blitz. London, Coventry, and other urban centers became targets of mass bombing. Nights filled with fire and destruction, but British morale did not break. On the contrary, the RAF used that breathing room to repair airfields, reorganize units, and regain strength. The cost for the Luftwaffe was enormous. Its bombers were vulnerable to British fighters, and although fast and versatile, the Bf 109 had limited range, which prevented it from staying over enemy territory for long. As losses grew, the dream of conquering the British skies began to slip away. Finally, in October, Operation Sea Lion was cancelled. By then, the Luftwaffe had suffered its first major defeat. The Battle of Britain not only stopped Hitler, it also exposed the structural weaknesses of the Nazi Air Force. It proved that the Luftwaffe, designed for rapid campaigns and close ground support, lacked the strategic bombers needed to subdue an industrial nation like Great Britain. Defeat over Britain marked the beginning of the decline of the force that had seemed invincible. And as if that were not enough, even though it remained a formidable player, the course of the war imposed challenges it could not overcome. In April 1941, its operations expanded to Greece and the Balkans to support Italy. And in June, Operation Barbarossa began, the invasion of the Soviet Union, where its first days were spectacular.
On the first day of the German offensive, 31 Soviet forward airfields are attacked. Over 1,400 aircraft are destroyed on the ground and 322 in the air. The cost to the Luftwaffe is only 36 aircraft.
But that effectiveness quickly ran into the vastness of the Eastern Front and the Soviet resistance that soon wore down its capacity. The fundamental problem was structural. the Luftwaffe had not been conceived as a strategic bombing force. It lacked long-range aircraft to strike Soviet or later American industrial centers. Meanwhile, the Allies' mass production tipped the balance overwhelmingly. Between 1939 and 1945, Germany built about 118,000 aircraft, an impressive figure, but not enough compared to the 300,000 produced by the United States, the 157,000 built by the USSR, and the 131,000 manufactured by the United Kingdom. In 1944, Germany reached a record with more than 36,000 aircraft built, but the effort was futile. By then, there was not enough fuel, not enough trained pilots, and not enough spare parts to keep them in the air. The situation became critical with the arrival of Allied bombers in full force. Formations of B-17 Flying Fortress and Lancaster aircraft began to devastate German cities day and night, while P-51 Mustang fighters escorted missions deep into the heart of the Reich. The Luftwaffe tried to respond with fighters like the FW-190 and the advanced Me-262, but technological advantages could not compensate for the lack of men, fuel, and material. Victories that once seemed routine were reduced to distant memories. Desperate operations marked its end. In January 1945, with Operation Bodenplatte, the Luftwaffe launched a surprise attack against Allied airfields in Belgium and the Netherlands. Although it destroyed dozens of aircraft on the ground, the cost was catastrophic. Hundreds of veteran pilots were lost, an irreplaceable blow at that stage of the war. By the time spring 1945 arrived, the Luftwaffe was little more than a shadow. Young pilots had barely any training, aircraft sat on the ground for lack of fuel, and the skies over the Reich were dominated by the Allies. So the Air Force that had been born in secrecy, that had spread terror in Warsaw, Rotterdam, and London, ended its story as an exhausted army with no wings left to fight. Its meteoric rise had revealed the deadliest face of modern war. Its fall, in turn, reflected a nation shattered by total war and defeated by the industrial and technological superiority of its enemies. In the end, the Luftwaffe embodied Nazi air power. Born in secrecy, it rose as an instrument of terror and conquest, but it ultimately crashed against its own limits and against the overwhelming capacity of its enemies. Its history reflects both technological daring and the strategic mistakes of a regime that confused speed with invulnerability. What began as a symbol of supremacy ended as a warning. No empire can sustain control of the skies without the industry, the vision, and the resources that secure victory in the long term. That brings us to the end. If you enjoyed this video, we'll be waiting for you in our next installment as we keep discovering military history.